Coach.Fru here. Welcome to today's presentation. So today's presentation is going to be an executive introduction to serverless. Serverless is a topic a lot of people are talking about. A lot of executives are thinking about it. But what exactly is serverless? That's what we're going to be looking at today. So for this presentation, we're going to look at the definitions of serverless. We're going to look at the pros and the cons of using serverless or going serverless. And we're also going to look at some examples of serverless providers. As a bonus, I'm going to be doing a demonstration of a product that uses serverless behind the scenes. So you definitely want to pay attention to that as we go through the presentation. Now, that said, let's dive in to serverless. So what exactly is serverless computing? If you do a quick search on Google, on Wikipedia, this is what a lot of people would see. This is what a lot of executives would come across. So serverless is a computing method of providing back-end services on an as-used basis. Serverless architecture allows users to write and deploy code without the hassle of worrying about the underlying infrastructure. A company that gets backend services from a serverless vendor is charged based on the computation and do not have to reserve and pay for the fixed amount of bandwidth or number of servers as the service is auto-scaling. So this is kind of a mouthful of a definition, and it's no surprise why people would read this and still leave without understanding what exactly is serverless. For example, one of the questions people might ask is, all right, serverless, does it mean my company is going to go without servers? Sign me up for that. All right, that's what people might think, but that's not true. That's not true. To a certain extent, there are no servers, but of course there are servers. So we're going to see what exactly we mean. All right, so it does not mean, serverless does not mean that there are no physical servers. There are physical servers, but the question is, where are those physical servers? So we're going to dive into and look at all of those in the presentation for today. Now, let's go into a better definition using an analogy which I think would get the point across for most people. And the analogy we're going to use here is going carless, right? So just imagine you have a friend and this friend talks about being tired of having a car, right? What they don't want is, to pay for insurance, to maintain the car, buy new tires, change oil, and just the overall hassle that comes with being a car owner. So a friend of yours decides that, all right, I'm done with this car thing. I don't want to have a car anymore. I'm going carless. So how could they do that? Is it even possible to go carless? All right. And this is an example from a society like the US where, people really need cars. So if people really need cars and your friend wants to go carless, is that even possible? So let's see how somebody could potentially go carless. All right, we know your friend definitely likes to travel. They need to move around, of course. They need transportation. But if they go carless, how can that make that possible? They don't have any cars anymore. How can they make that possible? So what they can do now in today's world is maybe get an app, and that app signs them up for Uber or Lyft. And with that app and Uber, they can get the transportation they need. All right, so this friend can truly go carless by simply just getting an app. And at any time they need transportation, because transportation really is a need more so than the car itself. They say, all right, Uber, I need to go from point A to point B. Uber comes by, takes them to that location. As soon as Uber drops them, they're done. All right, they move on. They don't need a car anymore. So just because they're going carless doesn't mean they give up on transportation. So what this person really needs is transportation. And so with the services that are available today, it's 100% possible to go completely carless and not own a car, not have to change oil, not have to pay insurance, not have to maintain that car, right? The washer fluids and all the things that goes into a car. The person can completely get rid of that and have on-demand transportation simply by using an app or the services that are provided by the transportation company. Now, going carless doesn't mean cars are out of, cars don't exist anymore. Of course, Uber owns a bunch of cars. So the question of going carless is basically who takes responsibility for owning the car and maintaining that car. Now, that responsibility shifts from the user to Uber. Cars do not disappear because somebody is going carless, right? There's still a lot of cars. As a matter of fact, there are more cars. But now Uber and Lyft are responsible for owning those cars and maintaining those cars and paying insurance and changing the oil and making sure the tire is all right and everything. and the people are just simply using the services. So going carless doesn't mean we get rid of cars, all right? And this is a good analogy to the serverless discussion. So going serverless doesn't mean we get rid of servers. It simply means who owns those servers and who is responsible for maintaining, upgrading, patching all of those servers. Now, if we take this back to the serverless analogy and just focus on what an organization might care about, is basically you have a bunch of developers who want to write code or develop an application. That's what they care about. So the business might, or your organization might want a functionality. What they don't want is to be in the business of buying servers and putting operating systems on that servers, patching the servers, and all of the hassle that comes with that. All right. So now there are a bunch of services like Google, Azure, AWS that are providing all of these services in the cloud. So as a developer, you focus on writing the code. All right. So whether you're using Java or Python, you simply write your code. Now, once you write that code, typically people would want to take that code to run on a server that they have. But in the case of serverless, you simply ship it off to somebody else to just run that code as a function. All right. And so they're really providing a back end for you as a service. So instead of you buying all of those servers and keeping them up and the electricity, the cooling, security of those servers, you simply just focus, this write code and just deploy into those servers that are hosted by one of the serverless providers. And my function or my code is simply running in there. So the developers don't have to worry about this anymore. As a user, I simply interact with those functions, and I really don't, as a users, I don't care where that function is running. And so this is the beauty, and this is why serverless is very attractive to a lot of developers, to a lot of startups, to a lot of companies that are thinking, well, we have a bunch of servers sitting around us, or we have a bunch of infrastructure, and we now have to hire a bunch of people to manage and maintain that infrastructure. Why don't we just focus on what we do best, which is writing code and building functionality, and let somebody else worry about that infrastructure, and we just run our code on their platform as a service. And so this is really the whole idea of serverless. If you go back using the carless analogy, basically a person focuses on transportation. For an industry, the developers are focusing on their code, and that back end and the entire infrastructure is outsourced to third-party vendors. AWS is a big one, Azure is big, Google is big as well. All right, so this is the executive view of what serverless is. And as you can imagine, going serverless does come with some benefits. But before we go into the benefits, I want to do a quick demonstration here of serverless in action. So this application was built. So this is a Threelly application, which is a Chrome extension. You can grab the Chrome extension. It's available for free on Chrome. And once you have that extension and you go into YouTube, what this extension does is it allows you to index a video. So the typical way of watching a YouTube video can be very tedious. So you can, this is a lecture, it's about 52 minutes long. But what this extension, once you have it, this is a Chrome extension here. Once you have that extension, the AI bookmark, and guys, by the way, check out the extension, link in the description below. What it does is you can come in here, index a video. I've already done this for this video, and you can see right at your fingertips the topics, the keywords, and all of the things that we discussed in this video without even watching the video. So here for topics, I can see oscillators. All right, I can see exactly where this professor at MIT was talking about oscillators in this video, and I can zero in on that. All right, I can look at keywords. Let's say kinetic energy is something I want to learn, being a physics student. And traditionally, I have to watch this entire video to see where the professor talked about kinetic energy. Now I can click on that, and I can see the exact locations. If I play this, you can see the exact locations where the professor was talking about kinetic energy right at your fingertips. So this is an application, again, available for free. Check it out, link in the description below. But how was this built? So this video is indexed already. Let's go to a video here that hasn't been indexed. And the way you would do that is when building this application, what we need to do here is analyze this video. So if you come on a brand new video you haven't watched before, what you want to do is analyze the video. So you want to click here to analyze that video. Now, once you click it, there's a lot of things that will happen behind the scenes. All right. So to actually go through the video itself and understand what exactly is happening, all of that happens behind the scenes. Well, we could have bought some servers and run the code that we wrote for this to run on those servers. But no, that's not what's happening. As soon as you call this function, there is no server sitting anywhere. All right, we simply just go to the service providers, the AWS, the Amazons, the Azures, or the Google, and simply leverage serverless from them and just run that code to analyze this video. And once the video is analyzed, we get the results back and we display it here. And so behind the scenes, there's really no infrastructure, or there's very little infrastructure to support something like this. All right, so this is complete serverless. And the beauty of this is the overhead was very, very small then. All right, the overhead now was very small for the team. We focus on the code for analyzing this video, for indexing this video, as opposed to focus on the infrastructure where this actually runs. Now, Amazon might upgrade, Azure might upgrade, Google might upgrade. It doesn't matter for us. We're simply just running our code with what they provide. Again, it's just like running, having transportation without having a car. We care about transportation. We don't care about cars. So this is a good example. I can go into the details of the entire architecture for this particular application. If you have questions about that, let me know in the comment section below, and I can respond to that. But hopefully this gives organizations or startups or teams an idea of the power of serverless. All right, so check out Threelly AI, link in the description below. That said, let's go back to the pros of serverless. So this is not all roses and glory and all your problems are solved with serverless. There are definitely pros and benefits to serverless, but there are also definitely cons and negatives. So we're going to look at both of them, the pros and the cons. Of course, the pro is pretty self-evident, right? There is no server to manage. Server management is not necessary anymore. All right, like I talked about this example, I don't have to worry about upgrading a server, patching a server, security, vulnerability, hiring somebody to do that. That simply goes away. All the focus about is writing the code and just running the code itself. No infrastructure. Now, serverless architecture is inherently scalable. Guys, it's pretty self-evident. In this case, I have this extension on YouTube. 1,000, 1,000,000 people could be indexing any video they want. All right, and now I don't have to go buy a new server to accommodate that scale. If 10 people are indexing, we run 10 functions. If 100 people, we simply scale. We let the service providers worry about the scale, and I just simply worry about the function. It's just like your friend who needs transportation. They can just order as many Uber cars as they want, and they don't have to worry about buying 10 cars, right? If you have a bunch of people visiting you, just order Uber 10 times instead of worrying about, okay, do I have to go out and buy 10 cars or rent 10 new cars? You cannot do that. You really cannot scale that way. All right, Uber can allow you to scale because they already have a fleet of cars available for anyone to use. So serverless gives us that. So in this case, Threelly can scale because it's inherently running on serverless infrastructure. So that's one of the flexibilities or the appeals of serverless for organizations or for executives. Quick deployment and updates are possible. Again, with this application, upgrade, I'm just writing my code. Again, the functions is running on AWS. They worry about the patching and updates and all of that. Developers are only charged for the space they use, reducing cost. Again, I don't get charged if this function is not running. So as long as no one is indexing the video, I don't get charged. Now, if somebody's indexing the video, I get charged for that, but a very minimum cost. So you can really think about this where you get paid, you get charged for what you use. Now, if nobody's indexing, why should I be getting paid, or why should I be paying for a server if no one is indexing a video? So that's not acceptable. All right, but serverless allows me to not pay if I'm not using the service. So I'm paying only if someone chooses to index a video. So that gives me a lot of flexibility and cost management, which can be very appealing for organizations that want to reduce cost. Buying servers, especially production grade servers, is expensive. It's an expensive proposition. And to just buy them and keep them sitting without using it is not a very good, smart decision. And so that's why serverless could be very appealing for executives. Now, what are the cons of serverless? It's not all roses and glory, like I mentioned earlier. There are definitely challenges that comes with building serverless infrastructure or with going serverless. All right, so it's not like an executive might just go to their team and tell them, all right, you guys go serverless and we're done. We get rid of our data center, we get rid of any infrastructure, and we all just go serverless. It's not as easy as that. There are definitely some challenges. All right, some of the cons to this would be testing and debugging, because this code is running. Again, I'm going to bring the example here. Because this code is running just in a function somewhere on Azure or on AWS in the cloud, I have no idea where that's running. And so if I want to debug this and see the logs and be able to trace things, it can be challenging. Now, there are ways around that, but just something to be aware of, that, it definitely introduces some overhead when it comes to testing and debugging. All right. Serverless architectures are not built for long running processes. Again, serverless, you pay for what you use. So ideally, you don't want to have a process that runs for an infinite amount of time, because that can make your cost almost infinite. So in this case, the indexing piece should be very short. Once we see the video, we can index it very quickly and we're done. And that's really what happens. So you can go ahead and try it with the extension. Just index the video. There is some payment to that, but once you go through that and the video gets indexed, you see that happening very quickly, we're done. Now, if this was a very long running process, I would have to think twice about going serverless versus just buying a server or a dedicated server and just using that. All right. So there are ways to get dedicated servers, even in the cloud. So that's always an option. Performance might be affected. Again, just something to be aware of. Risk of vendor lock-in. And this is critical as you're thinking about companies thinking about your infrastructures. If I'm going serverless and I'm running my serverless on one of the vendors, say AWS, now I'm locked into AWS, right? I'm building my code to run on AWS. We believe that AWS will be around for a while, for a very long time. But what if Jeff Bezos wakes up tomorrow and decides that he's tired of AWS and getting rid of that? Now all your code is running on AWS, and you might be screwed. Again, the likelihood of that happening is almost close to zero. But again, we always have to think about the what if scenarios and plan accordingly. Or what if the prices for AWS increases without us being able to respond to that? That could be a risk. So just something to be aware of, that putting all your eggs in one basket or all your trust in one provider or one vendor could be a challenge, or something that a lot of people might not be so inclined or so happy to do. Now, that said, let's look at the providers that are available out there. Quite a bit of providers, quite a bit of options. If this presentation has convinced you or made you think about serverless and you want to go out and try, what are the options that are available out there? There are quite a bit of options. The most popular one, or the most common one people are familiar with, is Aws Lambda. Now, AWS provides a lot of services. Again, there is the infrastructure as a service, there is a platform as a service, there is a software as a service, but functions as a service is a completely different thing. So Aws Lambda is basically the function as a service on AWS. You write a function, you simply just run that function in AWS. As an example, in AWS or any of those providers, I have a function running called Analyze Video. And so that's basically what this is. Now you have Google Cloud Functions. Again, that's very similar to AWS, but just from Google. Some differences and some similarities, but the concept is the same. Azure Functions is another popular one. IBM OpenWhisk, Alibaba Functions Compute, Ion Functions, Auth0 WebTask, Oracle FN Functions, Kubeless, Rackspace. The list is long, and there are many options that are available depending on what your preferences are. All right, AWS, Azure, and Google are some of the big ones, but there are a lot of players in this market. So if you want to go serverless, there are so many options that are available for you to choose. Now, that said, just found this quote just a very relevant to share as people are going down this journey of serverless. The whole idea of serverless, if we can summarize it into one quote, would be this: focusing on your application, not the infrastructure. And that's what serverless promises. Now, whether or not it delivers on that would depend on your specific situation. What kind of applications are you building? What are the characteristics of your applications and the methodologies you have in place that will determine whether or not serverless might work for you or not. But for people that serverless is an option for them, it could prove to be really efficient and valuable. But as always, it doesn't work for everybody. This is not a panacea. One size doesn't fit all. So it's very important to look back at your infrastructure, your code, and how your operations are in place to see if serverless is a right fit for you. But at the end of the day, serverless allows you to focus on your application, not the infrastructure. Just like the person who wants to move around is focusing on transportation and not owning cars. A lot of people now are focusing on give me a ride, take me from point A to point B, and I don't have to own a car. You can still get that service without owning a car. You can still build your applications without owning a server, Linux, databases, and any of that. You can just run it as functions. So that is the summary for that serverless. I hope this was helpful. What we saw in this presentation, what is serverless? We saw some analogies of what serverless is. We went through some definitions of what serverless. We looked at an example of what serverless is using the Threelly AI Chrome extension to see. And we also saw the pros and the cons of serverless. Why is it good? Why is serverless, or why might it not be good for your situation? And then we also saw some providers that are out there providing services for serverless, so functions as a service. Hopefully this was helpful. I hope you like this video. If you do, make sure you like it. Check out Threelly in the link below. Share this with somebody that might get value out of it. This has been Fru, and I will see you in the next presentation.